Hi, it's Heather. I'm a certified arborist in Bloomington, Indiana, and today, amongst other things, I thought we'd talk a little bit about soil. Um, but first, ladies, I don't know why it took me so long to figure this out, but when anniversaries come around and you're thinking about what to get your hubby or significant other, spouse, whatever, um, think don't forget about getting something you would like also. So this year, I suggested to husband, I was like, hey, why don't we actually get the pond happening? And so that was my gift to us, was getting the pond liner. I've actually been digging out for the pond for a couple years. Um, This is one of the spots where the stilt grass was the worst. And in a way, it's kind of why I decided to do it. But uh, in the digging of it, all the sandstone that you see in the pond thus far all came out of this hole. Um, and so I think that's a really good, some of these are not small. Um, like this guy. This is pretty big. So is that guy. There's one down there is pretty big. Um, so that is where soil comes from. Um, all soil, depending on where you are on planet Earth, um, the soil is basically a weathered parent material. And so where I am, we're sitting on sandstone, and it's actually pretty cool. I found a lot of fossils in this little spot. Lots of crinoids, some coral, um, and so that's another thing about learning to deal with the soil that you have is when you learn to dig, you will find really cool things. But so that goes to using the proper tools. So when I set out to start digging, I was digging with this guy, and actually trying to get the last stone out is how I bent this guy, but he still works. I definitely plant and weed with it still. Um, but so many people, so I guess the reason why I'm talking about that soil today is last year and this year, um, soil being brought in to a property was, I would say, the number one problem I found with landscapes. Um, you know, so many people are just put off about having to either plant or just deal with clay in general, um, which is, what we have here in Bloomington, Indiana. Um, but the plants that we should be planting, they're plants that have evolved to grow in clay soil. Their roots are adapted to it. Um, and, when we have a um, healthy soil organisms, that's what's really important for plants, So, the maples and oaks and hickories in our woods, they've evolved to grow on this sandstone. Um, and so, they're putting them in 2 feet of brought in compost or topsoil is not how they're meant to grow. So you can get tippy plants, but even aside from, plants lacking the support that they've evolved to have, the weight of the soil that's brought in, it compacts the soil underneath. And so all the gardens that I was working with this year that had problems, they all had soil that was brought in, and the soil wasn't draining properly because the soil underneath is compacted. And so, the plants can't grow down through it, the water can't drain down through it, and then we have problems. So what I found, I think this is, I think I managed to get down about 3 feet, and I just decided that that's probably a good depth for me right now, because I just want to have fish again. And so using the right tools is going to help us aerate the soil in such a way that, tree roots are going to be able to penetrate. In clay, trees that are supposed to be here, they're the ones that are really going to be breaking up that stone, because they're questing out for water sources and additional nutrients, and that's what they've evolved to do. So, when we give them a little bit of help, aerating the soil a little bit, they're going to do the hard work. So, and I'm a girl, I dug this by myself. So without, a big loader, and, it's doable. You just got to use the right tools. So some things about clay that are really cool is clay is really good at hanging on to nutrients. Like, sandy soils, nutrients tend to wash out because, there's nothing for them to grab onto. Clay soils are really nutritious. Often times, have a good amount of calcium in them. Clay that comes from limestone, which would be under the sandstone, can be a little alkaline. So it's a good reason to plant the plants that would be growing in your area, because then you're not going to run into the kind of pH problems that can cause some nutrient deficiencies. What's the other thing? So we don't leach nutrients. Clay, when it's treated properly, is really good at hanging on to moisture. If it's treated improperly, compacted, water can pool and run off. But when we use tools like spading forks to dig, we get that aeration happening, and water is able to percolate, and roots are able to grow out of the planting holes. So, think less about improving soil. Everyone thinks they have to improve soil. I used to think that. I forget even when. I just noticed once I started using a spading fork years ago, because I thought I would be less likely to hit cable lines, because the garden that I used to work at, the cable lines were like 3 inches under the surface of the soil, obviously not installed correctly. And in large part, this is true. But what I noticed was how much better plants grew and how much better the soil drained once I started using a spading fork. Um, so that's what we want to focus on is aerating soil. We don't want to turn it over. We don't want to cultivate it. One of the worst things you can do with clay is pulverize it because we lose the structure. Um, so, you know, um, oh, I'm going to lose my train of thought. I'm sorry. Um, anyway, use the soil you're given. Plant the right plants in it. Um, yeah, you'll have less trouble with water. You're going to have, you're not going to have to fertilize. Um, yeah, it's just a good deal. It's just going to make your life easier. It's, you know, and that's the thing too. If you're dealing with a big project, um, you know, if you feel like you have to bring in soil for everything, you know, that's another thing you have to spend money on. And I would just always have people spend money on plants. Um, get those plant communities going, and they're going to start breaking up the soil for you. So, anyway, we will talk more about soil because I should probably like sit down and actually write something out. But um, that would be my advice: is don't bring in soil. Um, use what you have. Learn how to aerate it. Um, and yeah, if you have any questions, give me a holler, comment, and like down below. And you know, if you think about it, subscribe, and we'll have some more lessons. So thanks. Have a great day. Bye.